So Krishna wants exclusive bhakti, and so he was not okay with Indra being worshipped alongside, Supreme Personality of Godhead being worshipped. So he starts giving further arguments. Sorry, those who are watching the recording, you missed a little part, the back. So he gives further arguments about exclusive shelter and worshipping Govardhan, you know, and so thereby he again goes through the whole exercise of convincing the Vrajvasis to worship Govardhan, because Govardhan is the one providing the cows shelter. So he talks about, the Vaishyas. The Vaishyas generally do krishi, go raksha, and banking, right? So agricultural farming, cow protection, or and thirdly banking. That's what Vaishyas do, and they belong to the Vaishya community. And then Govardhan had a lot of contribution in that process, so we should worship Govardhan. So that was, so Krishna is actually Govardhan, so we worship Govardhan as the personality of Godhead. That's a form of Krishna, in fact. So Govardhan came from South India. There's a back history to it. There was he was cursed to reduce in Kali Yuga. So if you read in the Bhagavatam, Govardhan is mentioned as a massive mountain, whereas Govardhan is actually reducing every year, very little bit by little bit. And it said that by the time Govardhan is, the Kali Yuga's golden period is over, Govardhan will be also zero. It won't exist for the rest of Kali Yuga. So only in the golden period, which is the first, I think, 10,000 years, that Govardhan will be there. But when Govardhan is gone, devotion will also be not much prevalent in this world. Anyway, so Govardhan is actually a form of Krishna. So then devotees of Braj, they started offering all different preparations of food to Govardhan, and Govardhan, as Krishna as Govardhan, was accepting all this food, and he kept on saying Aniyor, Aniyor, which means like bring more, bring more. So he's insatiable. The Govardhan's hunger is insatiable, like literally, like village after village, people are giving food, and Krishna is accepting it. And finally somebody gave Tulsi, and Govardhan was fully satisfied, like, okay, that's it, because Tulsi is dear to Krishna. And when you offer Tulsi, that's why in our food, when we offer bhoga, we offer Tulsi with the food. So Krishna is satisfied, even if there is not too much bhakti in our cooking and offering. Tulsi makes Krishna happy. So Govardhan was fully happy. Now Indra was like super unhappy. Indra is like, how dare this little boy convince these people who have been giving rain for so long that they should worship Govardhan instead of me. So I will show them who's the boss. Now Krishna's case, paritranaya sadhunam vinashati duskritam. So he is here to annihilate the miscreants. Now Indra is not a miscreant. He's not a dushkrita or a demon. But Indra got very, very proud, intoxicated by pride. And you will notice when non-devotees get proud, Krishna doesn't do much with them. Like Kamsa getting proud, he lets him get proud. Go, fill up your sinful pile, and then eventually he'll finish them. But with devotees, if we get a little bit of pride, Krishna slaps us and gets us back in shape, because he doesn't want us to walk in that trajectory, right? So Indra, being also a sura, not a asura, he was a sura, he's a demigod. So he got proud. So Krishna wanted to teach Indra a lesson. So he wanted to reduce Indra's pride and bring him back to normalcy. So thereby all this pastime. So each, like I said, every leela, every pastime of Krishna has multiple layers to it. So from one layer, Krishna wanted to establish no demigod worship. Another layer, he realized Indra got proud. So to reduce Indra's pride, he manifested this pastime. Another layer is Krishna wanted to be with all his devotees all at once, right? There is never a pastime where Krishna is with all his devotees. He's at night time with the gopis. During the day, he's with the gopas and the cows and the calves, right? In the afternoon, he's with the demons, killing them. But he's never with everyone all at once. So this was that moment where Indra decided to shower massive, massive rain, like pillars of rain. That is generally Indra uses to destroy the universe. When the annihilation of universe happens, those kind of samvartika clouds and things like that, are sent by Indra. But here, Indra was like, I'm going to destroy this little village called Vrindavan. It's a forest, it's a tiny little place. Like, I'm going to destroy it. So he showers in all these thunderbolts, and all the cows and calves and gopas and gopis, everybody's like, knows only one thing. When in trouble, Krishna, help! Krishna, help! So they came to Krishna, little baby Krishna, right? He's still a baby. And Krishna was like, yeah, I got you guys in trouble, so I'll get you out of it. So follow me. So Krishna, Krishna goes all the way to Govardhan, and everybody's following. Like, what is Krishna doing? We don't know, but we are following Krishna. He'll protect us for sure. There is no doubt in anybody's mind that Krishna will protect them. So Krishna takes them to Govardhan, and it is described like a child plucks out mushroom. Krishna also plucks out Govardhan with his little left hand, little pinky, little finger, right? He just picks up Govardhan like that, just to show he's God, right? Just like, you go to a gym, some big muscular guy will show you like, oh, you're struggling to carry this weight, I can just carry it with one finger, like that. Krishna is like, little finger, I'll lift a whole mountain. And left hand, little finger. So he showcased. Okay, he picked up the whole mountain, and everybody's like, whoa, so they all got under the mountain, and the rain, protected from the rain. And then Krishna Sudarshan Chakra went around Govardhan hill, constantly going around, drying up the rain, so no rain can enter the Govardhan under the Govardhan mountain. So you see the picture, as Govardhan has been lifted up. There are all these trees and things that are on Govardhan. All the roots are hanging. So all the Vrajvasis, especially the Gopas and their parents, the fathers who had sticks, the cow herders, they realized, they're like, how is little Krishna going to just be able to carry the whole mountain by himself? Let us also help him. So they also put their sticks up like that, trying to help Krishna. Of course, their help is not very significant, but they felt that they should also help Krishna. So Krishna allowed that. So Krishna, what he did was, again, another pastime that he does, multiple facets. So as he's very happy, all the devotees are here, his eye obviously falls on Radharani and the gopis. And as he falls on Radharani, he gets a little distracted. And as he gets distracted, the Govardhan, his hand gets shaken up, and the mountain shakes up a little bit. So all the people are like, yeah, Krishna needs our help. He's not able to hold up the mountain. So we should all put our sticks up. So they are also feeling important, that we are also contributing. Krishna is not alone. He's holding with his pinky, and we are holding with our sticks, and we can hold up Govardhan till this Indra is done with destroying with his raids and all. So in one sense, Krishna is supporting, making them feel important, the Gopas. In another sense, he's also reciprocating to the gopis that you got in my mind. I got distracted by looking at you. And he's smiling and looking at them, as they say, Kataksha, which is like the corner of his eye. He's looking at the gopis. So like that, 7 days pass. Indra is just throwing everything under his toolbox that he can possibly do. And, nothing. They were not even able to touch any of the Vrajvasis. All this rain cannot even enter Govardhan. And Govardhan is in ecstasy. By the touch of Krishna's little finger, Govardhan is in ecstasy. Even though Indra's, thunderbolts are hitting Govardhan, Govardhan is not even feeling that. He's so happy. So you have to understand this, just like Balaram, right? And this is a very complicated concept. So Achintya Bhedabhed Tattva. Just like Balaram is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, at the same time, he's Balaram, right? He's individual. He's not Krishna. Or Sri Ramchandra. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he's not Krishna. He is Ram. He has a personality. So similarly, Govardhan is also Krishna, but he's also Govardhan. So as Govardhan, being the personality of Godhead, but still as Govardhan, simultaneously is Govardhan, simultaneously he is Krishna. He's feeling these thunderbolts hitting him, but he's in complete ecstasy by the touch of Krishna's little pinky. Right? So simultaneously, all the devotees are very happy to be with Krishna. They're looking at Krishna. Krishna is looking at them, and through their glances and smiles, they're all just experiencing nectarian joy, right? Including Govardhan himself, who's basically getting all the rain and the thunder and everything else. Finally, after 7 days, Indra realizes, oh my God, I think there is something wrong here, because I've tried everything in my power. And this little boy seems to be more powerful than me. So, when reflection comes, so reflection in a devotee's life is very important, because when we get proud and we start flying high, without reflection, what happens is we are just blind, intoxicated. Just like alcohol is intoxicating, drugs are intoxicating, pride is the most intoxicating of things. So, and from alcoholism or whatever, when you get a high, there are ways people come down to normalcy. So similarly, when one is in pride, one is intoxicated with pride, reflection and self, um, I don't mean to say self criticism, but self assessment. That's not the right word, but it's not coming to me. I'm sorry. The right word is not coming to me. If you can suggest, you can type in the chat. But basically, Indra started thinking internally that something is wrong here. Let me think what is going wrong. So he was down from his pride. Now he was thinking more logically. And he was like, who can, defeat me? There's only one. I'm the king of demigods. Nobody's more powerful than me. But introspection. Thank you, Pooja. So that's the right word. So he was introspective. He was thinking, who can defeat me? And there's only a handful of people. And one of them being the personality of Godhead. And it's like, oh my God, is this Krishna? Is this actually my boss? Oh, it is Krishna. And he realized how big of a trouble he's in. So he immediately stopped everything. And then I think, if I can remember correctly, he went to his guru, Brihaspati, and he asked, I have made a big mistake. What do I do? And so under proper Vaishnava guidance, he came down with his elephant. His elephant has multiple trunks. You might have seen him. So with his elephant, Indra comes down to Krishna. And, by now Krishna has dropped Govardhan. Everybody is doing everything else. And the cows are grazing and everything. And Indra asked for Krishna, will you please give me some time? He asked for appointment. Krishna gave him an appointment. Krishna is sitting there. And Indra comes and does Abhishek through his elephant. He does Abhishek of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and offers amazing prayers of glorification. And also, he apologizes. He says, I'm sorry, I was too proud. I didn't recognize you. In my pride, I was blinded and intoxicated. Please forgive me. I've come to you as a humble servant. Please accept my apologies. And Krishna smiled and he went back to play with his friends. Because Krishna, he's all about his devotees. With demigods and all, he doesn't exchange much. Like even before Krishna came, when Kamsa was causing so much trouble, or when Hiranyakashipu was causing so much trouble, right? The demigods were in big crisis. So they went to Lord Brahma. And Lord Brahma, being a pure devotee, who's, by the way, in our disciplic succession, we are in Brahma Madhava Gauriya Sampradaya. So Lord Brahma went to the milk ocean to see the Lord, to see, Vishnu, Lord Vishnu. And there, Lord Vishnu speaks to Brahma directly, heart to heart. And then Lord Brahma tells the demigods, this is the instruction I've received. The Lord will personally come, Advent. So back in Hiranyakashipu's time, he came as Nrsingadev. And now, during Dwapar Yuga, he said he'll come as Krishna and Balaram. So the Lord will come, and he has told all of you demigods to take birth. So like that. Even during Lord Ramachandra's time also, same thing. The demigods took birth as Vanaras, as monkeys and bears to assist the Supreme Lord. So like that, the demigods don't have direct access to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The demigods go to Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma goes to meet the Supreme Lord personally. The Supreme Lord speaks to Lord Brahma, and Brahma, in turn, talks to the demigods. That's the protocol. So the boss, Krishna, he doesn't generally talk to the demigods directly. He's the boss, right? Just like a minister, prime minister, you don't directly, you talk to the secretariat, you talk to the assistants, and they tell you what needs to, the IAS officer or whoever, they'll take care of things for you. So like that. So, but with devotees, like right after he's done with Indra, he's going to play with the devotees, right? They're feeding him, they're tug of war, They're singing, Krishna's playing the flute, the cows are playing with Krishna, Krishna's holding onto their tail and running around, all very, very intimate. So it is described in the scriptures that actually devotees are far more closer to Krishna than anybody else, and devotees are, or pure devotees, are considered higher than demigods. Even though demigods are very powerful beings, who are controlling various departments of the universe, but the devotees are far more powerful in terms of their power comes from Krishna. They're just dependent on Krishna. Anything with the devotee happens, Krishna will personally come and take care of things, right? Whereas demigods, they have their own astra, shastra, and knowledge and beauty and power and everything else that they are limited to. It's a lot, but that's their limitation. But devotees, like for example, in terms of Ambarish Maharaj, right, who was the emperor of the whole world. But when Durvasa Muni tried to kill Ambarish Maharaj, he was humble. He just thought of the Lord. And immediately Sudarshan appeared. Sudarshan appeared and killed the demon that Ambarish Maharaj, that Durvasa Muni had created to kill Ambarish Maharaj. And then after that, Sudarshan went after Durvasa Muni himself, who is an expansion of Lord Shiva, by the way. Durvasa Muni is a very powerful rishi. He is one of the expansions of the Rudras. But even such a personality, was completely had to surrender to Ambarish Maharaj. He went all the way up to Lord Narayan. He was first with Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva said, can't help you, sorry. Lord Brahma, can't help you, sorry. When Lord Narayan is like, sorry, can't help you either, because I'm bound by the love of my devotees. I'm actually subservient to my devotees. That's what Lord Narayan said. So he said, if you go to Ambarish and he forgives you, then Sudarshan will leave. So he went to Ambarish, and Ambarish Maharaj said, what are you saying? Forgiveness. If I've done anything good in my life, I give you all of that. May all my good, pious, karmic activities, anything good is there in my this life and past lives, may they all go to you. Who is he saying this to? Somebody who wanted to kill him 5 minutes ago. Right? That's the mood of a devotee. We are not avengeful. We are loving. Right? So coming back to this pastime. So even in that case, you can see that directly not accessible to many people, but through his devotees, Krishna is accessible. And that's why the bhakti process in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says in chapter 6, text 47, that bhakti is the highest process. Why? Because it has direct access to Krishna, and it is the only process where there's complete dependence on Krishna. In the jnana process, the dependence is on one's own intellect and ability to learn, right? Knowledge. In the karma process, the dependence is on one's ability to do certain activities. In the Ashtanga process, the dependence is on one's ability to control senses. But in the bhakti process, it's surrender. Is my dear Krishna, I'm not depending on my abilities, I'm depending on you. You want to keep me? You can keep me. You want to destroy me? You can destroy me. I'm all yours. I was kind of appreciating, as I was reading a little bit, that the two devotees who died in Bangladesh, I mean, what kind of motivation they might have had, right? When this 200 people from a certain religious sect attacked that temple, everybody ran haywire. But when two devotees, they saw that these people are coming to break the deities, especially they were coming to drag Srila Prabhupada out, one of them actually stood up for Prabhupada, knowing that there are 200 of them with sharp weapons, with fire in their hands. They are completely crazy people. But he still risked his life, even if it looked illogical. Where does that come from? That is the thing. That's the surrender of a devotee. That, you know what, my life is irrelevant. Let me do this. And he was killed, unfortunately, and there was another devotee who was killed, and many were injured, and it was horrible. But I was thinking, from just putting myself in that situation, I was like, what kind of strength of character and strength of dedication they must have had to even stand up for it when everybody else was running away. That, you know what, just let us save our own lives. And that's the right thing to do, by the way. In case, God forbid, anybody goes through that situation, but in case that is it, do run for your lives and do protect yourself. But at the same time, those who did stand up, it's tremendous respect for them, because just to appreciate where their strength was coming from, where their Krishna consciousness was coming from. And it can feel like, I know many of you mentioned to me later on that actually one of us left the group even thinking how Krishna couldn't save his own devotees, so how can he save me? So I will not be part of Philosophy Friday. And I find that a little hurtful, and also maybe it's a fault on my side that I'm not explaining things clearly. It is important to understand that what happens between the devotee and Krishna is very personal, and most times others cannot understand what is happening. There are many times devotees, very amazing devotees, have died from car accidents or died from situations like temple burning and things like that. This is not the first time temples are being burnt. For thousands of years, this has been happening. There has been Jagannath Puri temple has been broken and burnt. I don't know how many times. That's why they don't allow non-Hindus to enter the temple even. The point is, this has been happening and many devotees have died. But does that mean Krishna cannot protect his devotees? No. The point is, Krishna's protection comes in a way that we need to first understand. I'm just purposely going in this topic on a very happy day because it has been brought to my attention by many devotees, and I thought I should discuss about it. Because Krishna, what he's protecting is our bhakti and our journey back to Godhead. For example, if you're in the bathroom, right, and the light goes off, or the toilet clogs up or something, that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. But the point is not to remain in the bathroom. Our real place is in the living room or in the bedroom. That's where we spend our time. And quickly do your stuff and get out of the bathroom. That's the whole point. So if you see from Krishna's vantage point, that is the whole idea. That this material world, what we live for 60, 70 years is not even a breath of Lord Vishnu. In fact, one breathing of Mahavishnu is one whole cycle of universe creation and annihilation. That's 311 trillion years. So 60 years is not even like a spark. So this little life is very, very trivial. What Krishna is protecting is our bhakti. He's providing all the arrangements. So our bhakti is protected and we can come back to the place where we belong. That is Goloka or Vaikuntha. That's where we belong, where there is no time, where there's always day and night, where there's Krishna personally present with us, right? This is like a bathroom where there is birth, death, old age, disease, difficulties from other living entities, difficulties from different weather problems, difficulties from demigods, all kinds of problems. Dukhalayam ashashvatam. This is a difficult place. So whether somebody dies a natural death, whether somebody dies a painful death, death is death. And know for a fact, Krishna, for a dedicated devotee, he comes as death and he takes care of them. So even if it looks like the death was unfortunate, it is Krishna personally takes care of the devotee. So we don't know the devotee's experience when they're leaving their body. No, they're not here to tell us that. But the point we understand from scriptures is that is a personal experience between devotee and Krishna. So protection we get from Krishna is a protection of the bhakti. Like I said initially, when a devotee gets proud, Krishna slaps the devotee. Immediately you'll see things changing in your life. And you're like, oh, I've gotten proud. Okay, I should be humble. Right? Why? Because that's Krishna's protection. Demigods won't do that. They'll be like, it's karma, you have it. Get out of the way. Like a bank teller. Money is your bank account, I'll give it to you. You ask for it, I'll give it to you. It's your money. I don't care. Good for you or not. But father or mother will be like, with this money, what you going to do? If they see the child is going to take drugs, they're going to probably curtail it. If the child is responsible, then they'll be like, okay, you can have this much money now. Like, I saw an interview of Mukesh Ambani long time ago with Simi Garewal. And at that time, their kids were very, very young and they were still billionaires. And husband and wife both were mentioning that, we don't want to give our children all the luxuries of life because that would spoil them and they will become like another spoiled rich kid. And if you see, So they were giving their children pocket monies and letting them earn by good behavior and whatnot, earn the money. And I was like, that's amazing parenting, you know. Whereas if you see the interview of Shah Rukh Khan, he was like, I want my kids to do whatever they want, drugs, sex, everything else, no inhibitions. You know, if they can do anything, they should have full freedom that I didn't get as a middle class guy. I want my child to have it. At that time, Aryan Khan was only 2 months old, and we saw the results. So, not deprecating anyone or glorifying anyone, but the point is two kinds of parenting. So, Krishna's parenting for us is, I'll give it to you when it will not destroy you. Sometimes money can destroy you. Sometimes something you desire can destroy you. Right? So Krishna sometimes gives a little bit of time. That okay, you have the desire, I'll give it to you, but you prepare yourself first. Dhruva Maharaj, he wanted a kingdom larger than his father and his grandfather, which is practically bigger than the universe. And he went through 6 months of austerity. The Lord saw him face to face. He was like, okay, I had material desire, I don't want it anymore. And Krishna is like, that's your qualification to rule over. Because you don't want it, now you're not, that hankering is not there. Like politicians, the hankering of power actually makes them unqualified to rule. But when a leader is not hankering for power, they can work out of duty, not thinking what will make me famous. Somebody's mic needs to be muted. Prayash. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. So when there is hankering for fame, name, recognition, following, then one cannot do what is best for their followers. But when there is actually, one is devoid of all that hankering, na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim, kavitam, vajagadishakam, that's when one is qualified to actually rule and be a leader. Because in that state of mind, one can think what is best for the citizens, what is best for their followers, rather than what will make me look like a, popular leader. So, coming back to the context. So that when we are given some responsibility by Krishna, he wants to make sure that we can handle that power, we can handle that responsibility. Only then it is given to us. Right. And also there is time, place, and circumstance. Like Srila Prabhupada, he got the instruction to come to America when he was in his 20s. He came to America when he was in his 70s. Why? Because that was a perfect time. The hippie movement started at that time. Prabhupada got his ticket to Jaladuta exactly when people were ripe. They were looking for an alternative. And that's when the Hare Krishna movement exploded around the world. Right? People needed that, and that was the right time. So Krishna is very thoughtful. Unlike the demigods who are like, you want it, you have it. You give me a nariyal, I'll give you this. Right? Whereas Krishna is more like, let me make you ready for it. Let me make sure the timing is right. And as a loving father, he gives us what we deserve at the right time. So it enhances us. What is he protecting? Protecting our bhakti, protecting our path back to home. When a child is lost and he's on the phone with the father is guiding him, beta, yahan se niklo, get out from here, go through that elevator, get out of this door, here's a dark alleyway, avoid it, right? So Krishna is on phone with us. So it's protecting our journey back to him, rather than protecting this body, or protecting anything material that's anyway going to change or go away in time. Does it make sense, or does it unsatisfy you? I just wanted to have a little discussion based on this, because I know many of you have complained to me that this Bangladesh incident has been a faith breaker for some of you. Just wanted to understand, do you understand this?
So Prabhuji, can I speak?
Yes, please.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Thanks for the beautiful explanation. So it makes total sense to me. In fact, Lord Krishna starts the Bhagavad Gita by isolating the death from the spiritual life. So this totally makes sense. Only small thinking internally is that any movement and religion or any philosophy, uh, if it has to survive in the material world, we somehow need to make sure that it is also protected in the material world. For
Yes.
example, if let's say celibacy as a philosophy, if everybody becomes celibate, it's great. But what will happen is that after one generation, there will be no celibates. Only the people indulging in sex will actually remain. So they still need to have a small channel. And similarly, like if devotees, they totally give up their bodies, for example, it's great for them. But in order to sustain the movement for thousands and thousands of years, they still need to be some attachment to the body.
Absolutely. And not everybody is giving their lives. Like when Srila Prabhupada had some devotees go to Pakistan and he heard that India Pakistan is going into war, the Bangladesh war was about to ensue between Bangladesh and Pakistan, and India was supporting Bangladesh. Srila Prabhupada immediately asked the devotees, get out of Pakistan, save your lives, get out. So the point is not like we should all go and give our lives away. If you come to Mayapur ISKCON, you will see people with guns, right? We have literally people with 10 guns standing here because there is multiple threats on Mayapur temple, not only from Bangladeshi people, but there are also locally. Mayapur is in the middle of a Muslim populated community where there is tension, there is, it is difficult, and it has happened before. We have been attacked before in Mayapur during Srila Prabhupada's time. That's why Narsinghadev was installed. Srila Prabhupada said, install Narsinghadev and there will be no more attacks. And since Narsinghdev's advent, there has been no more attacks on Mayapur. But there has been attacks before. So right now, if you go, there's super security, people with guns, there's literally military, deployed. So yes, we should take preventative action. We should take, our Kshatriya community should grow. Having said that, when unfortunate incidents happen, we should not blame Krishna and just give up our faith. That's not the right understanding. We should understand that things happen in certain ways. Like one of our amazing Kirtaniyas, Ayendra Prabhu, used to live in Vrindavan. He used to offer food in the middle of the night, especially during a month like Kartik month, because his mood was Radha and Krishna gets tired after dancing. So he would offer them bhoga. And one day his stove burst. And he used to be a Kirtaniya, so his room was soundproof. So, nobody could hear what was happening. Only next morning they found the entire room was burnt and Ayendra Prabhu's, dead body. But his body was found completely prostrated, Dandavat Pranam, towards his deities. And he left his body paying obeisances to his deities, right? Unfortunate incident for such an amazing devotee. But again, to think about it, I would love to pay my obeisances to the Lord, at my last moment. That is a great opportunity to think of Krishna when I'm leaving my body. And we don't know. It's an unfortunate thing that, there was a fire incident and he died or he left his body. But between him and Krishna, what is happening? It's not something that we will ever know or we can understand. So all we can do is appreciate that Krishna is our ultimate protector and he protects in his own way. And the most important thing that he protects is our soul and our bhakti. Right? Does it make sense, Janak Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu.
Anything else?
Yeah, Prabhu, it completely makes sense. And also, like in Gita, Bhagavad Gita says that in the last moments of our life, in whichever, like whatever we memorize in our mind, whom we call, the only thing, the soul goes to that like place. Like you said that the obeisance that
Yes.
Prabhu is giving, so he surely went to the Goloka.
I mean, he was already a liberated soul, to be honest. He was a very, very elevated soul. But yes, he was practically in Goloka consciousness, even being in Vrindavan. But yes. Kranti is saying, yes, your explanation relates to not only one, but many of the personal experiences. Thank you. Thank you, Kranti. Nice to hear from you. Krishanu, I'm very much convinced with the explanation, Prabhu. I just want to have your insight that what should be our set of actions after this so that our great devotees are not compromised again. Well, there has been worldwide protests. There has been super pressure that has been put on the Bangladesh government from our connections with different governments. So ISKCON is in different governments. Devotees are there. And all those governments or consulates have put pressure on the Bangladesh government and those perpetrator, the person who put the Quran on the lap of, I think, Hanumanji or Durga Devi, the person who started this whole thing. So they put the Quran on our deity and they said, we have done it. So CCTV footage actually found out who did it. That person was arrested. And the second person who was motivating the crowd on Facebook Live to burn temples, that person was also arrested, along with 400 other people who were arrested. So we did do the protest. We did put pressure from different governments. We did everything that was necessary to put those people and exemplary punishments be given. So Bangladesh is a country that's dependent on aid from America and India and other countries. And they know they shouldn't mess with ISKCON, at least, because ISKCON, being a worldwide organization, having connects in the highest levels of authority. So from our prime minister to presidents and prime ministers around the world have condemned this, and that's what has been taken into account. Having said that, given I'm on the board of ISKCON News, tremendous effort has been taken to make sure Islamophobic comments are not encouraged, Islamophobia is not encouraged, and that we don't become another fundamentalist action, which is like us versus them, because ISKCON or Vedic culture stands for a peaceful understanding of all people who are God conscious are going in the direction in their own way, but trying to at least the commonality between all God conscious people is love of God, right? Every religion talks about cultivating the love for the supreme personality or their creator. So I know some of you might have different opinions, but the point is that's what binds us. Let's not focus on what separates us. What binds us is we believe in cultivating love of God, and so does every other theistic religion in the world. And that's what we focus on, and we want to stay that way. We don't want to make it us versus them, because there is no end to war. And we have seen jihad, we have seen how much Palestine, Israel has suffered, how much these religious wars have destroyed this planet over thousands of years. There is no end to it. So we don't want to be part of that. So having put pressure on the government to put the perpetrators behind bars, at the same time making sure that we don't go in that direction of Islamophobia and hurting religious sentiments, because that's not what we stand for, right? That's also a very important aspect that has been very carefully kept into practice. In fact, one person was just there for ISKCON News, and another person for other media that we have, where comments that were Islamophobic were constantly being deleted and hidden, just to make sure that we are not creating another war on Muslims in Hindu populated areas, because that's not what we want. We just want the murderers, who are the people that are there, should be punished, and that's about it, right? So there is a balance, and this is not about Hindu-Muslim fights and things like that. I hope that's clear. That doesn't make sense to you, Krishanu?
Yes, Prabhu, totally.
Okay. Akshat, Prabhuji, in Maharashtra, I have heard that Lord does come in path of death, but he protects small birds whose nests was destroyed. I did not get that, Akshat Prabhu. I have not heard about that, about small birds. Janak Prabhu, I think one of the devotees' name was Parthadas, reminded me of Abhimanyu, who, despite being so close to Arjun and the Lord Krishna, still lost his life. Still, Arjun's faith in Lord Krishna was definitely not shaken. Easier said than done, but just a thought. Yes, that's the respect we have for Partha Prabhu and others who gave their life. I'm just unimaginable what kind of strength of character they must have had to take up that bold step at that point. Siddharth, Hare Krishna Prabhu, regarding faith, I don't know this relates or not. I have been following your session and hearing Bhagavad Gita on multiple platforms. Last month, attended friend's marriage, got a Radha Krishna small murti as a return gift. Oh, how sweet. It's wonderful. Radha Krishna has come to you. You can offer them food and water and flowers if you like. Okay, any other questions? Or realizations or something you want to share? By the way, happy Diwali to all and happy Govardhan Puja. Sorry, I didn't wish you earlier. Okay.
Happy Diwali, Prabhu.
Yes, thank you. Going back to Govardhan pastime, we went into Bangladesh somehow. So going back to Govardhan, any questions on the pastime, on the Leela, on anything with demigod worship, doubts that you might have?
Prabhu, I have something, but apart from this, Govardhan discussion,
Yeah, go ahead.
I have watched a video of some one, like maybe I don't know. So he says that the chakra, which what do you say, like Krishna's chakra is here in somewhere when Krishna leaves his body from this earth. So chakra is somewhere hidden, and when in this Kali Yuga, Krishna comes with a new avatar like a Kalki or somewhere. So Kalki, he finds the chakra to end the demons or some. So is it like true? He came because he refers to some kind of scriptures to this.
Please don't listen to people like that. I beg you. Only listen to people in the disciplic succession or authorized. Sudarshan Chakra is Krishna's associate. Sudarshan is always with Krishna. It's not buried anywhere. It's a personality actually. Sudarshan is a personality. Even with Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra, you'll see Sudarshan standing there next to Krishna. So it's not like it's buried somewhere. It's Krishna's weapon, Krishna's associate, always there with Krishna. I don't know any truth to that. It's buried somewhere. It's in use.
So, actually, I also not really, like didn't believe that, but he refers some kind of scripture.
Prabhu, there is a
I
lot
don't
of things
remember.
that, when I was in 17 years old, learning, trying to find spirituality, I was looking at some Sai Baba something, and there it's mentioned that, oh, in the Vishnu Puran, it says Vishnu will come in the form of Sai Baba. And I believed it. And then later on, when I actually read, there was nothing like that. So sometimes people, for validation's sake, they say scriptures say this, say that. But you should read the scripture yourself, ask for the exact text, exact form where it is, and then find out for yourself. But no, don't go with that. Many people cheat in the name of scriptures. That's not true. Okay. Anything else? Prayash, at the time of death, what we think of, we get in the next life. What if the things we want is not in our karma? So it's going to be less. So this is the idea. The destination is defined by what you think of. So if you're thinking of your favorite movie star at the time of death, if it's not in your karma to be human, then you might be born as a lizard in that movie star's bathroom. I'm just thinking that. So that's what it means. So destination is decided by what you meditate at the time of death. If you're meditating on Krishna, then yes, that's where you go. So depending on your karma, you can be born as that movie star's child, maybe, or the movie star's cockroach, or lizard, or the movie star's dog, right? But since you're thinking of that movie star, the destination is you go there. Okay, that's the whole idea. Or if the movie star is dead by then maybe in her family or something, you're born or something of that sort. The point is, Krishna, your karma and your desire go hand in hand. So if you don't have too much karma, but your desire in the direction, you only get a part of it. But in that direction you go, right? So the direction is defined, but how much fuel you have in your vehicle is defined by the karma. I hope that is easy to understand. Janak, that was Pinky is asking, why do demigods not becoming devotees of Krishna? They are intelligent, right? Yes, and intelligence is not the deciding factor for devotion. Bhakti is. So in demigods' case, what happens is these are people like ourselves who were enamored by heavenly pleasures. Beautiful girls or beautiful men, amazing intoxicating beverage, amazing sex life, amazing riches, long life, right? All of that was the motivation to do all the Ashwamedha Yagyas and all the wonderful things they did to get to where they are, having huge power over us, right? So Ganesha, Chandra, Varuna, Surya, all these great personalities, Indra, amazingly, they have worked very hard to get there. Now, what happens when you get there? Just so since you're an entrepreneur, Pinky, let's talk from a CEO perspective. Somebody who's starts as a normal employee, works very, very hard, and finally gets to become the CEO of the company. Now, are they intelligent? Absolutely. But when you work very hard and you get there, there is an attachment. You tell them now you become a Krishna devotee. It's going to be very difficult because they're attached to some certain things and they're going to work very hard, and that's their mood, unless they have been in the path of Krishna consciousness before. Point is, they're intelligent, but intelligence doesn't necessarily mean spiritual intelligence, right? So doesn't necessarily mean they'll become devotees. Having said that, many demigods are devotional. Many demigods are not. They are more attached to the sattvic sense gratification, which is temporary, rather than going back home, back to Krishna. So they prefer like, no, let me be here. Let me enjoy all the stuff. Let me get the bodily pleasures. Let me, and that's why they are who they are, and they are respectable. They're worshipable, but they're not devotees because their goal is sense pleasure, power. A devotee's goal is association of Krishna, being with Krishna. Different goals. Does it make sense, Pinky Mataji?
Yes, completely agree. Yeah. And I have another question, like how do we draw the border of pride factor? Like generally the people, or myself, in my experience, it's like we have so many abilities, but we are not showing it or expressing it like we have this ability, or we are having this much happy moments. So we are actually introvert, not saying this. But for an entrepreneur, especially to build a brand and all, they have to expose, yeah, I am having this abilities. But as a humble person, we are restricting to show all this. But we are just feeling that all this are actually others will feel that it is, yeah, we are just expressing so much. So how could we draw this border?
Very, very nice question. Very nice question. So externally, we do showcase, our resume, our LinkedIn, our social media presence. Personal branding is very, very important for entrepreneurs, especially now. Externally, we manifest this is the qualities and we sell ourselves. Internally, we acknowledge that this is all a gift from Krishna and it can be taken away anytime. So let's not get carried away. Pride is getting carried away, getting intoxicated and feeling I am invincible. The Ravana mentality. Nobody can beat me. I am invincible. Humility is reality. That time, Krishna, as time, can destroy anything. Today I'm intelligent, tomorrow I might not have the intelligence. Today I'm beautiful, tomorrow I'm not very beautiful. Today I have the ability, tomorrow I might lose that ability. So let me be humble and let me acknowledge where this is coming from. Because the source and I are connected, then whatever is required for my sustenance will be provided, whether I have it or not. Krishna says, Yoga Kshemam Vahamyaham. Whatever you lack, I carry. Whatever you have, I sustain. So as long as we recognize that this is coming from a higher authority, we are humble. The moment we forget and we think it is us, why is that person not recognizing me for who I am? Why is that person not giving me respect? Why is the expectations that come because of who I am? That is ahamkar. That is illusion. But as long as we are connected with our source and we recognize that whatever I have is by Krishna's mercy, and whatever credits that are coming, when they come, go to Krishna, right? Thank you, Krishna. You're very kind. You're giving me all the credit, although you're the one who is, empowering me so wonderfully. As long as that clarity is there, we can go on glorifying ourselves on social media and whatnot. As long as we are not falling for that ourselves. Right? Let others believe you're very talented and everything, but you should believe that you are being empowered by Krishna. Yes, you're talented, you're gifted all of these things, and they're coming from your past karma as well as Krishna's empowerment. There are many talented people in this world. Let me tell you, Vinod Kambli, for example, was a very talented cricketer, as much as Sachin Tendulkar. But Sachin, where he is, and Vinod Kambli, nobody even remembers him. So talent is not the only thing that makes one successful. There's empowerment that okay. The empowerment from Krishna is also important for us. Now you will say, what about the atheistic people who are doing really well in life? Yes, their empowerment is their own karma. They're limited by their karma, and if it is in their karma, they will go to that extent and won't go beyond that. For us, unlimited. If Krishna empowers us, we can do unlimited things, whether it's in our karma or not, it doesn't matter. So that's the difference. So pride is acknowledging Krishna's empowerment, acknowledging our karma, acknowledging who we are. Also, it shouldn't be like we become sheep, right? And then let everybody walk all over us, especially as a woman entrepreneur, Pinky and Kranti and others who are here. Very important to understand, as because you're a woman and you're in a patriarchal society, people will want to walk all over you. Do not let them do that. You have a spinal cord, you have self-esteem. It's very important to maintain that. But there's a difference between confidence and arrogance. And the difference is, confidence is knowing Krishna is my father, and my confidence is in my faith in my creator. Arrogance is, I am the doer. Kartaham iti mannate. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, right? That you think you are the doer and you are the one, you're the boss, like Hiranyakashipu used to think, and that is pride. So the moment we shift into that zone, it's dangerous. So we should always, when we find ourselves moving in that zone of getting proud, we should bring ourselves back. My dear Krishna, I know this is your empowerment. Let me stay humble to you. But to the world, hey, here is my resume. Here is my, whatever. Our LinkedIn should look like sparkling, especially if you're in Kolkata benches. All right. Thank you very much. One more minute left. Let me quickly see. Okay, Amit. Even in the material world, there are many intelligent people like IPS doctors and engineers, but all are not devotees, right? Akshat Prabhuji, so pride can be destroyed by Krishna's mercy, right? Yes, I hope that you don't go that far that Krishna to destroy it. Rather, you recognize it yourself and you just or confine it, right? So rather than Krishna taking action, you confine it, you recognize it, and you confine it. Otherwise, Krishna might nudge you in the right direction. If you still don't get it, he might help you further, which might or might not be very pleasurable, to say the least. All right. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your Govardhan Puja. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Govardhan Puja ki jai. Lord Ramachandra ki jai. Lord Krishna ki jai. Hare Krishna, everyone. Have a good night. Take care.
Hare Krishna. Hare
Hare Krishna.